You've got to look at the evidence. And the evidence says that around these scenes, and from where these people have disappeared, there's no tracks, there's no scent. So how is something getting out of that area without leaving behind evidence? They were even there, and that doesn't make any sense. Every year thousands of people are reported missing in our national parks. In many of these cases, the circumstances surrounding their disappearance are outright bizarre. Join me as I discuss 10 more of the strangest disappearances in our national parks. Please note that some of these cases have very limited information available. We've done our very best to include as much possible based on the information available. With that said, let's get started. No. 10 Terrence Woods. 27-year-old Terrence Woods was last seen at the Penn Mine near Oro Grande, Idaho on October 5, 2018. At the time of his disappearance, Terrence had been working with a British film crew on a documentary about abandoned gold mines in Idaho County. According to the film crew, Terrence had been acting strange on the day he disappeared. Terrence was last seen when he suddenly jumped off a steep drop and started running away. Some members with the film crew tried to run after him, but they quickly lost sight of Terrence, and their efforts to locate him were unsuccessful. The sheriff's department took immediate action and had crews searching from the air and ground. Despite an extensive search and expanded search area, Terrence remains missing. No. 9 Connie Johnson. 76-year-old Connie Johnson, along with her border collie Ace, were last seen on Fog Mountain near Big Rock, Idaho on October 5, 2018. The area of Fog Mountain is very remote and is only accessible by horseback or by foot. Connie was cook for the hunting campground, and she had arrived early to the campsite prior to the other hunters. The last communication with Connie was between a group of hunters traveling to the remote campsite. When they made radio contact with Connie, they were unable to understand what she was saying. When the hunters finally arrived to the camp next day, they were unable to locate her. Connie was a well-trained outdoorswoman who had previously worked as a U.S. Forest Service ranger, and she frequently led young people in groups on tour of the backcountry. The Idaho County Sheriff's Office was notified, and search efforts were organized. In addition to Idaho County personnel, the Forest Service, the U.S. Air Service, and backcountry rescue helicopter assisted in the search. The search was called off on October 16, 2018. 3 weeks later, Connie's dog, Ace, turned up at the Moose Creek Ranger Station, around 15 miles from the camp, but without Connie as of December 2019. Connie remains missing, and there have not been any updates. In a bizarre coincidence, Terrence Woods, who was mentioned prior to this case, went missing on the same day and just a few miles away from where Connie disappeared. No. 8 Floyd Roberts, III. 52-year-old Floyd Roberts was last seen on June 17, 2016. Floyd became separated from a group of companions during extreme heat conditions at approximately 4:45 p.m. The group had planned a 9-day hike on the Shipwits Plateau that would exit the canyon via Separation Canyon. He was last seen near Kelly Tank, heading towards Trail Canyon / a 14-mile canyon in the Shanley Springs area towards the river, but may have descended into 209-mile canyon. The National Park Service conducted a 6-day search effort, but found no clues to guide them on a direction where to continue searching. Floyd's friends and family members have also conducted for Floyd, but their searches yielded no new information. In addition, flyers with Floyd's picture and description remain posted at various South Rim locations and in the search area at Grand Canyon Parashant National Monument. No. 7 Drake Kramer. 21-year-old Drake Kramer was last seen on February 1, 2015, in the vicinity of Bright Angel Lodge on the south rim of the Grand Canyon National Park. Drake stayed the night as a guest at the Bright Angel Lodge and checked out the next morning. Prior to Drake's disappearance, he sent his family a bizarre text message that stated he had to give his body to Mother Earth. Drake's parents believe that the text may have just been a reference to escape to the outdoors. It was very unlike him to travel to the wilderness, alone, but he had been to the Grand Canyon 2 or 3 times before. However, he was very experienced in the outdoors. Park rangers search and rescue searched the South Rim area from Hermit's Rest on the west side to Grand View on the east for around 6 days, the Park Service said, quote, "Teams of searchers have walked miles along the canyon rim, searched heavily forested areas, utilized dog teams, performed several over-the-rim technical searches, and conducted multiple aerial reconnaissance missions to support ground searches, end quote, but the search was to no avail. Despite nearly 5 years later and continued searches, Drake remains missing. No. 6. Morgenheimer. 22-year-old Morgenheimer was last seen on June 2, 2015, in the vicinity of Pumpkin Springs in the Grand Canyon National Park. At the time of his disappearance, Morgan was working as a commercial guide for a rafting company. The group was on day 6 of an 8-day trip on the Colorado River when he went missing. A member of Morgan's group stated that he last saw Morgan standing at the river's edge. He said when he turned to face Morgan moments later, Morgan had simply vanished. Park rangers and search and rescue teams searched the river and the land around Pumpkin Springs, followed by an extended search to Diamond Creek, about 12 miles west of Pumpkin Springs. All the members who were with Morgan's group were interviewed, but no new information came to light. Despite nearly 5 years later and continued searches, Morgan remains missing. No. 5. Jason Knapp. 20-year-old Jason Knapp was last seen in his residence in University Terrace Apartments at Clemson, South Carolina on April 11, 1998. When family and friends were unable to contact him, a missing person report was filed. 10 days later, his 1990 white Chevrolet Beretta was found and parked at Table Rock State Park in Pickens, South Carolina, approximately 30 miles from Clemson University, in a very rugged area. Authorities found a receipt from a local Wendy's restaurant dated April 12, 1998, at 1:30 p.m. inside the car. Investigators believe that Jason drove to the park on April 12, but they're uncertain if he was alone. There was no sign of foul play at the vehicle's location. Authorities searched the surrounding terrain for 2 weeks and found nothing of interest. Jason withdrew $20 from his bank account on the day he disappeared. There hasn't been any activity on the account since then. He left behind most of his belongings, including his camping gear. He had planned to search for another apartment the weekend after his disappearance. Jason was an ROTC student at Clemson University. At the time of his disappearance, he majored in mechanical engineering and was doing well academically. He's originally from Pennsylvania and graduated from Central York High School in 1996. Despite 3,400 hours of searching by search and rescue professionals, including dog teams from North and South Carolina, Jason remains missing after 20 years. No. For Barbara Thomas. 69-year-old Barbara Thomas was last seen on July 2019 while hiking in the Mojave Desert in California. Barbara and her husband Robert were hiking in the hidden area of the Mojave Desert, north of Interstate 40 and east of Kelbaker Road. Robert stated they were making their way back to their camp when Barbara walked ahead of him. When he stopped to take a photo of a rock formation, Robert said he saw Barbara around the trail's corner, but a few minutes later, when he rounded the same corner, he couldn't find her. He immediately got panicked, started waving his arms up while calling out Barbara's name. He looked around the area and saw that she was nowhere to be found. Robertson called 911 and that launched a large aerial and ground search for Barbara. Searching rescue members from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department were deployed into the field with K9 units. In addition, members certified in cave searches, rope climbing, and desert terrain ground searches were called in to search. After 14 days, the search was finally called off. No. 3. Samantha Sayers. 28-year-old Samantha Sayers disappeared on August 1, 2018, while on a solo hike on the West Peak Trail in the North Cascade Mountains in the state of Washington. Samantha started the trail around 8 a.m. was expected to be home by 6 p.m. to check in with her boyfriend. The following day, Samantha's family filed a missing persons report. She was an experienced hiker and had hiked the Vesper area before. The search for Samantha was one of the longest searches that authorities have undertaken. That area. After 3 weeks of continued search efforts, the search was officially called off. Search and Rescue Sergeant John Adams stated, quote, "We've exhausted all our leads and tips. We've interviewed every witness that has come forward and have double-checked every possible route that Samantha could have taken. If there was a place we thought she could get to, we put people there to look." End quote. Despite the extensive search, no evidence relating to Samantha's whereabouts have been found, and she remains missing. No. To Paul Miller. 51-year-old Paul Miller disappeared on July 13, 2018 in the Joshua Tree National Park in California. Paul was on vacation with his wife Stephanie to celebrate their 26th wedding anniversary as they were getting ready to leave their hotel in 29 Palms. Paul told his wife that he wanted to go out on one last hike in hopes of photographing some of the big horn sheep that are native to the area. Paul left the hotel alone at around 9 a.m. and drove to the 49 Palms Oasis Trail in Joshua Tree National Park. Paul promised Stephanie that he would be back later that morning. Stephanie wanted to go with Paul, but due to time constraints pressuring them on their last day, she decided to stay at the hotel and pack. The couple had both hiked in Joshua Tree National Park one day prior to this and on previous trips to the area, so Paul knew the trails and area fairly well. When Paul hadn't returned by 11 a.m., Stephanie called park officials, who began to search for Paul. At approximately 12:30 p.m., Paul's rental car was quickly located at the 49 Palms Oasis trailhead, and his cell phone was left behind at the hotel. Despite an extensive search involving 600 putting in people, over 6,000 hours, over 20 dog teams, an ATV search team, and helicopters, no sign of Paul has ever been found. Despite a large number of K9 teams, the dogs are unable to pick up a scent. The search scaled back on July 18th. Over 1 year later, Paul remains missing. No. 1. Devin Williams. The last week of May in the year 1995, a 29-year-old truck driver by the name of Devin Williams headed out towards California to make a delivery. Even though Devin had taken this route several times before, he would never make it back home. Devin would also leave behind a baffling mystery that goes unsolved to this very day. The mystery starts in the Tonto National Forest near Kingman, Arizona. Devin's massive 10-ton 18-wheeler semi-truck had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and went barreling through a campground, sending people running and scattering in a panic. Trying to seek cover, the truck then careened away, down the narrow campground and out of sight. The next time anyone would see the truck, it would be stalled in a field surrounded by woods, some distance away. It was then that two hikers stumbled upon the truck and a seemingly dazed and confused Devin Williams. As the hikers wondered what to do, Williams allegedly said to them, "They made me do it, I'm going to jail." Authorities were notified immediately, but by the time they had arrived, Devin was nowhere to be found. Considering the testimony of the hikers, it was thought that some sort of foul play was going on, but the inside of the truck was found well to be cared for, with no sign of any struggle. Devin had left behind his briefcase. Nothing seemed to be missing, and the cargo was completely intact. The truck was positively identified as being Devin's, but no one could figure out what had possessed him to take a detour to Arizona off the highway to go rampaging through a crowded campground he had never been to before, only to drive out into the forest and abandon his truck and cargo. Things will get even stranger when the next campers driving through the park drove by Devin. They described him as walking along in some sort of trance and talking to himself. They then stopped to ask him if he needed help, and Devin responded by saying, quote, "I gotta light the grill," end quote. He then proceeded to take a rock and strike it against the $20 he was holding. Then, without warning, Devin threw the rock at their car and they decided to drive off. That would be the last encounter that anyone would ever have with Devin. Extensive searches turned up absolutely nothing, leaving authorities trying to find answers, but there wasn't much to go on. It wasn't until May 2nd, 1997, when a human skull was just found a quarter of a mile from where he was last seen. The skull was positively identified as belonging to Devin Williams. But considering that there was no trauma or injury found on it, it's impossible to know how he died. The proximity of the skull to where he had disappeared was also a conundrum, as the area had been searched quite extensively in the days after he disappeared, and far from some remote wilderness. This is a very popular outdoor recreation area visited by scores of people. So, how did his skull go unnoticed for all those years? It doesn't make sense, none of it does. There's been no real theory that neatly ties it all together, and it all remains an enigma. What do you think happened to Devin Williams? Please let me know what you think in the comments section below. Case updates. There are a couple of potential updates on two of the cases we've covered. The case of Nate Ashby from episode No. 1. Last week, Nate's truck was pulled from the Missouri River. Inside of the truck, authorities found human remains believed to be that of Nate Ashby. Once more information is available, we'll keep you updated also. Paul Miller from today's episode. Human remains were found in Joshua Tree Park last week. Those remains are believed to be that of Paul Miller. Again, information is limited, but once there is more information available, we'll update these cases in detail. With that said, we would like to send our thoughts and to the families of Nate and Paul as they await confirmation. So there are 10 more of the strangest national park disappearances. As we continue this series, I'll keep you updated on these cases if updates become available. If you have a case you'd like to see featured in this series, please email us at disappearanceof@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.